Hello everyone and welcome to Beginner's Code, a place for you to learn with me as I dive deep into the coding world. Now before I start, if you want to learn a little more, please check out my website, my Instagram or my GitHub for projects. The links for these will all be in the descriptions below, so please feel free. Also don't forget to subscribe to see more videos from me as I teach you through the basics. Today we will be looking further into functions and how to use the return keyword. Okay, so in the last video we had a little look at how to create our own function, a little look at methods compared to functions, and how to take in parameters and give default parameters or default values to our parameters. So what I'm going to do is just start with, I'm going to create a little function that describes a restaurant, and it's going to take in three parameters: a name, a time, and a food. So what we're actually going to be doing here is just printing a statement that says the name of the restaurant opens at a specific time and they sell specific food. And what we're going to do is, just to show how this can be very useful, is we're going to call it twice. So to start with, we use the def keyword. So I'm going to call it desk_rest, so describe restaurant. And then pass in three parameters: name, time, and food. And just inside of the function, we're going to print an f string. And the f string will say name, opens at time, and they sell food. So that doesn't really make much sense at the moment, but when we actually call the function, and we pass in three different arguments. So what we'll do first is Pizza Express. So we're passing in the name because that corresponds to the name up here. And then the time, which will be, say, 9 a.m. And then the food, which is Italian. Now, if I then call it again and I pass in, say, McDonald's, opens at 6 a.m. and they sell burgers, nuggets and chips. And then if I run this, you'll see down here, if it decides to run, we get Pizza Express opens at 9 a.m. and they sell Italian. And then we get McDonald's opens at 6 a.m. and they sell burgers, nuggets and chips. So what we're actually able to do is just pass in the arguments, use them as parameters, and output something very easily. It makes it a lot easier, because if I wanted to, say, call this 50 times, with different information, then it would be a lot easier to just call this rather than having to type out this string every single time. But one thing that you do need to know is, if I was to change Pizza Express here to 9 a.m. and then passed Pizza Express into here and ran this, we get 9 a.m. opens at Pizza Express and they sell Italian, which doesn't make sense. So we need to make sure that whatever order we are passing these in at, it needs to correspond to what the order of the parameters are. So next we're going to have a little look at the return keyword, and the return keyword is very useful because sometimes we don't actually want to use or output anything from the function. We just want to call the function, have a number or something that can be used as a variable that we can then pass into something later, into, say, an if statement or a for loop or something like that. So what we'll do is we'll define the function, and we'll just call this add5, and we'll pass in a default parameter of num equals 4, and we'll just return num plus 5. And now what we can do is just create a variable, and we can call this function and assign it to this variable. So this variable will hold the function call. So add_5, and because we've already given it a default value, we don't need to pass in a number. So now if I do if new_num is greater than 6, then we can print new num is greater than 6, or else we can print this didn't work. And now if I run this, you'll see down here we get new num is greater than 6. However, if I change this to, say, 0 and run it, we get this didn't work. But we can actually use the return keyword to store things, which is very, very helpful for when it comes to much bigger programs. So to see this in another way, we can use the title case, or we can create a title from a word that's passed in. So for example, if I just created a function called title case, passed in a word, and then we can just return word.title, then we can print title case, and we can pass in a string that says hello world, this is a greeting from beginner's code. Now if I save this and run it, we get down here every single word printed in title case. And this is obviously, this could have been done by just doing print hello world and then passing in the dot title. It could have been done like that. However, this is just an example of how we can use the return keyword. So next we can have a look at, say, passing in a list. And we can return a specific number from the list, or we can return, say, the list times by 2 or everything squared. Or so what we'll do is we'll create a function and we'll just call popnum. And this is going to take in a list, and we'll create a new variable inside the list that is just assigned to the number that has been popped off. So the very last number of the list we will return. And now we can create a new variable called popped and pass in the popped num. And if we just, for the list, pass in a range, so this will be all the numbers from 0 through to 10, not including 11. And then we can just print popped. But we can also do popped times by 2 and reassign it. And then we can print popped. So we can use this variable throughout our code now whenever we use the return keyword. It makes it a lot easier, especially if there are things that we don't need to output right then and there, or we may want to do some more logic on. So we can actually put our logic inside of a function as well. So to show this, I'm going to create a function that checks to see whether a number is odd or a list, a number inside of a list is odd or even. So we'll create the function by defining the name. So check odd or even, and we'll pass in a list. So now we can actually loop through this list and check to see if the number is odd or even. So for num in list, if num mod 2 is double equal to 0, we will then print even, else we will print odd. And then what we'll do here is we'll just check odd or even, and we'll pass in a list, which is just the range function generating a list of numbers from 0 through to 10. So now we get down here even odd, even odd, even odd, even odd the whole way through. What we could do is pass in an f string and just say num is even, and we can down here pass in an f string saying num is odd. And then if I save this and run, we get down here 0 is even, 1 is odd, 2 is even, 3 is odd, 4 is even, etc. But what we could do is, if we wanted to just return the even numbers, or see if any of the numbers are in there, if any of the numbers in there are even, so if I change this to check even, then what we can do is loop through, and if any of these numbers are even, we return true. So if I then print this out and run, oh, that's because I haven't changed that back. So check even, we get true, and that's because some of the numbers inside of this list from 0 through to 10 are even. I mean, the first one is even. Well, depending on how you stand in a math point of view, 0 may or may not be even. So we can also use multiple returns. And multiple returns are very, very useful because they can actually be used to keep a while loop running. So what we'll do is we'll just create a function and we'll pass in the name of retry, which takes a parameter, and that can just be named whatever you want. For now, I've called it word. So if word is double equal to the string of quit, then we will return false, else we will return true. And now what we can do is just create a flag outside of the while loop, which is assigned to true, and this will keep the while loop running. And what we can now do inside the while loop is ask the user to enter some input. So please enter a word, type quit to end. And then now we will print the word back to the user so they know what they've printed. And then we will reassign flag to this function call, passing in whatever the user has entered. So now if I save this and run it, down here we get please enter a word, type quit to end. So if I type in hello, we get hello back. If I type in hi, we get hi back. If I type in Python, we get Python back. If I type in quit, you'll see that the function has now ended the while loop because it has actually returned false, because what I typed in was double equal to quit. That's all for today's video. Hopefully this has helped your understanding of how we can use functions to create data that can be used at a different point in our code. If there's anything that you'd like me to cover further, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me by dropping a comment below on Instagram or through my website. Stay tuned, as in my next video I will be using Google Trends to see which language was Googled the most in 2020. If you liked what we've been through today and you want to learn more, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date. Thank you and see you next time.